Hi guys. Okay, so maybe a week or so ago, a few of us were having a discussion on how best to go about setting up certain things in your car, in your hardware, that kind of thing. And one of the things we were talking about was setting up specifically the brake pedal. And Schmitty asked me to do it as a video so that I could go into a bit more detail. So that's the purpose of this video. Let's see. First off, for those of you who have never seen the coolest pair of sim racing boots on the planet, um, I have the camera set up so that you can see my brake pedal, but you also get to see the boots as well. These are custom made by Abruzzi, and since you probably can't tell from the camera view, the left boot is Hydra and the right boot is Shield. So top that. Okay. So what do I want to talk about here? First things first, There are two basic things that I want to cover in this, and the whole point of what I do here is to get the car to react in the way I want it to react on a consistent basis. And specifically, that's the brake pedal and how the braking is applied in game versus how I have the hardware and the software set up. The the first part of that is the brake travel, and I think I need to. Yeah. Okay. So the first part of that is the brake travel. There are two aspects to it that I'm going to talk about: brake travel and brake force. And brake travel is the first portion of that, which is why I have the camera set up the way that I do. So there is going to be variation, both in the hardware that you have and your preferences as far as how the brake feels. That's okay. It's more about the process and the way to think about it than it is about the specifics itself. But I'm going to run you through what I have and what I do so that you can try and take some of that to your own setup if this is kind of a process that you've never really given much thought. My brake pedals are the Fanatec CSL Elite load cells, which is a solid entry-level load cell pedal. There's nothing spectacular about it. There are certainly better pedal sets out there, but it does the job. It has a little bit of modifying, adjusting that you're able to do, but not a ton. The important part for the brake pedal is that it does allow you to adjust the amount of travel that is in the brake pedal. And it does that by a series of rubber elastomers, or grommets essentially, that you can change out. So although you probably can't see it very well, there are about a half a dozen of those thick rubber grommets in the brake pedal mechanism. Okay, and Fanatec provides them for the CSL Elite in 3 different levels of stiffness. And they put numbers on them, but the numbers don't mean much. It's best to just think of them as soft grommets, medium, and hard grommets. Right? The the softer you have them, the more travel you're going to have in the brake pedal, and the harder you put in them, the less you're going to have in them. So right now, mine is set up with a fairly medium level of brake travel. It's actually mostly the medium grommets with, I think, 2 soft ones mixed in. So that gives me essentially a medium level of brake travel as a result. If I went and put all of the hard grommets in there, the travel would be limited to more something like this, right? So there would be substantially less travel. Now, one way to think about the amount of brake travel you have is to think about the brake force as the amount of effort you have to use to attain 100% braking power. Okay, so that's the amount of work that you have to do. Whereas brake travel is the amount of space you have to do that work within, right? So think of the brake force as the weight of a hammer you have to swing around, and the brake travel as the amount of room you have to do that swinging. You know, maybe that helps. The So the brake travel is important because if you have so if I depress the brake pedal all the way right now based on the amount of travel that I have set up, right? That is the amount of space I have to make nuanced inputs into the brake, right? In other words, from the point where my foot is right now to the point of the least amount of travel, or the where I'm barely pressing on the brake, I have that amount of room which covers the entire spectrum of the brake force, right? If I were to set the grommets up so that they were at maximum hardness, leaving myself very little room to work with, then I'd only be able to press the brake pedal maybe that far. And now I have a much smaller window, far less room to work in to cover the entire spectrum of the brake force, right? Um, so that comes down to personal preference. You may like a lot of travel so that you have a very large window to work within to make very nuanced applications of the brake. Or you may find that it is easier for you to have very, very little travel so that, as soon as you start coming off of the brake paddle, there's a relatively significant lift of the brake power that is being applied. Okay? That is entirely up to you. And depending on your pedals, you may have little to no adjustment, without going outside for aftermarket modifications. But whatever you have to work with, that amount of travel that you use is a big component on your overall effectiveness to be able to brake with nuance and do so consistently. Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about brake force now just a little bit. Brake force is a setting that I have available on the wheel. And as I said before, it is the amount of force I have to apply in order to achieve 100% braking, right? So if I'm going to show you the big difference between them in a static position first. Okay, so on the Fanatec on the Fanatec system, you're able to adjust the brake force from a minimum of essentially 0 to a maximum of 100. And I believe they are doing that in kilograms. So I have it set now to 100 kilograms, the maximum level of brake force that is available. If I go in game and I press the brake pedal as hard as I can, as you can see, I just barely get over 50% brake pressure. Okay? Now I'm going to drop it down to the absolute minimum. And do the same thing. I'm nowhere near pressing on the full travel of the brake. I'm not pressing very hard at all, and I'm already at 100%. You can see I have that much more travel left. Obviously, there's some flex in my pedal deck. I don't have a solid aluminum frame, so that's the nature of the beast. So just ignore that because it really it doesn't impact greatly what we're talking about here. Okay, but so with the minimum setting, That's what happens. So let's talk about why that is important and why it's important for you to find the correct combination of travel and brake force that you use on a regular basis. So I'm at Silverstone because turn one in particular is a very good. Do I have? Yeah. Turn one is a very good example of a corner that you really want to be able to have a nuanced application of the brake and able to negotiate it at your best speed. And frankly, even the lead up corner to it is as well. So right now I have my brake force set where I always keep it, which is at 50 kilograms. Okay, so pretty much right there in the middle. I like a medium amount of brake force and a medium amount of brake travel. That allows me to do everything that I need to do. So let's go through this real quick and just watch my brake meter down there in the left hand or bottom right hand corner. Okay. Okay, so this the last turn is a good example of essentially a medium braking zone, right? Because it's not some place that I am typically going to be to be braking all the way. It's a slow speed corner, but I want to trail brake it, and I don't want to go 100% on the brakes. And this is what we're talking about with nuanced braking, right? It gives you the ability to use the amount of braking that you want to in order to keep the grip onto the front tires, right? And same thing in turn one. I don't want to be maximum brake pressure here because I want to maintain the aero balance of the car. So I want to use less braking and just a little bit of a trail so that I'm not upsetting the balance. Okay, so now let's back up and do that same thing. And first I'm going to go all the way to a maximum of 100 kilograms on my brake force. And I'm going to try to brake in the same place and in the same fashion, and essentially what you'll probably see is me overshooting the corners. Right? Pretty obvious. There just isn't enough force being applied to slow the car the way I want to slow it. So now let's drop it back down to the minimum, and you'll see the big difference the other way. Okay, so set it 0 now. Okay, so let's look at that last one because there's something very important that's happening there. Okay, so obviously compared to the 50 kilograms that I like to keep it at, when it's set at 0, it is far easier to achieve maximum brake threshold, right? No surprise there. And even though I start coming off of the brake pedal earlier in the corner, just like I did on the first attempt, it maintains that 100% brake pressure for longer because of the lower brake force. Okay, one thing that happens as a result, and this is why it's important to dial this setting in to your particular style, quite frankly, because this setting is probably not as important if you are a pure straight line braker. In other words, you do virtually all of your braking in a straight line, and you don't trail brake. Okay, that's fine. That probably having it set like this, where the brake pressure is too light and it's so easy to achieve 100%, will probably not affect you as much. However, if you're someone like me who likes to trail brake, does so in virtually every corner and relatively deeply into every corner, here is the problem that you're going to run into. Beyond the fact that the brake just isn't responding the way you want it to. So as soon as you go onto the brake and it goes to 100%, you are now overwhelming the grip of the front end, right? This will become painfully obvious in slower corners, especially like hairpins. The brakes are so easy to get to 100% that they will stay at 100% for a very long time after you have already reached the point where you need to start turning the wheel. That is going to induce understeer because you are still asking 100% of the grip for all of that braking. There's nothing left over in order to turn the front end of the car, right? So you're going to have this understeer that kicks in right at this moment when you're trying to do both of them, right? I've got the wheel almost 90 degrees and the car isn't turning hardly at all. And it's not until I really start coming off of the brakes that the rotation actually begins to occur in a serious fashion. Okay. Now this is absolutely an issue for most of us amateur drivers. I still do it to a much lesser extent than I used to, but almost all of us will run into this at least some of the time. So if you find yourself getting into particularly slower corners where the balance of the braking and the steering is never quite working out the way you want it to, there's a good chance that you have the brake force set up incorrectly for your style. Okay? Okay, so let's get out of Silverstone and go to Monza, because that is where I'm going to show you how I go about finding the sweet spot for me personally. Okay, so first things first, you can start in just a static position, right? So I still have the wheel, the brake force set to 0 at this point. So if I press all the way on the brake, right, no problem reaching 0 or reaching 100% on the brake. Now I'm going to gradually start increasing it. Let's go up to 10, and I'll do it again. Still no problem whatsoever to reach 100%. Up to 20. No problem. Up to 30. Still good. Up to 40. Taking a little bit longer to get there, but still no problem getting to 100%. And up to 50. Right? Still getting there, but you can see it's just starting to bounce a little bit at the top if I'm really not, paying attention. Okay? Let's go up to 60. Now I'm having trouble getting to 100%, right? I'll really have to force it in order to get it there, okay? Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to rely on a static test like this, because when you're in the heat of battle, you will not respond the same way, right? So don't trust it. And that's why we come to Monza, because we have an excellent heavy braking zone right at turn 1. So first things first, I'm going to back it off to my usual setting of 50 kilograms. Get some warm tires and just do essentially a quasi normal run up through turn 1, so you can see what that looks like. And I'll brake right at the 150 meter board. And trail into turn 1. Okay. Okay. Now, if I take a look at that, go back to replay, I want to see what the brake meter looked like as I was trailing in there. And I'm going to watch the brake meter, right? Did I hit 100%? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Yep, just barely, but you can see how quickly I come out of 100% braking threshold, right? Now, let's take it up to 60 and do the same thing. Okay, I'm now set at 60. That didn't work nearly as well. I don't think we ever got to 100%. That's my expectation anyway. Let's double check it. Yep, never did. 80% maybe or so, something along those lines. Okay. Um, so that is why I set mine at 50 kilograms, right? Because my goal is that in the heavy braking zones, like turn one at Monza, I want to just barely be reaching 100% of uh, of of total brake power in the heaviest portion of the braking zone, which is right at the beginning, right? Um, you might be similar to me in that you like to trail brake, but you may not trail brake quite as much as I do, you know? So a slightly lighter amount of force might work better for you than it would for me. Maybe you like to hold 100% brake pressure a little bit longer in a turn like this, and trail just a little bit less. I tend to try to have a very long trail braking period, right? It also has the advantage of allowing me more gentle, more nuanced approaches like turn one at Silverstone. But that's all personal preference and style. The point is that you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve so that you can then set up both the brake travel and the brake force on your rig so that it matches what you want to accomplish. If you can find that sweet spot, I think you'll find that it's much easier to achieve what you're trying to accomplish and do it consistently. So that's the little sparky, stupid tutorial on how to set up your braking shit. So I hope that helps, guys. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM or a message or whatever. And obviously, if you want to compliment me on the kick-ass sim racing boots, you're welcome to do that, and you may bow before me. See you later. Take care.